Don't need the money. You probably see the cash. We have a lot of cash. I believe we have substantially in excess of $400 million cash.
$400 million. That is how much available cash Donald Trump told New York prosecutors his business had as of last spring. Now, there is no way to verify that figure, and there is no particular reason we should believe Mr. Trump. But one thing we do know is that he may need at least that much money and possibly even more to pay for the verdicts he is facing in multiple courtrooms. Donald Trump is now on the hook for $83.3 million, which a jury ordered him to pay writer E. Jean Carroll for defaming her. And at any moment, we could get a judgment in Trump's civil fraud trial, where the New York Attorney General is asking for him to be fined $370 million. The judge in that case, Judge Engoron, has already found that Trump committed fraud and has even suggested he may force Trump to liquidate his businesses as part of his ultimate verdict. As we await that judgment, we're learning more about Mr. Trump's questionable business practices. An outside monitor appointed by Judge Engoron, her name is Barbara Jones, has just found several issues with Trump's business practices, including missing disclosures, math errors, and questions about a $48 million loan between Mr. Trump and one of his companies. And they are issues that outside monitor says may reflect a lack of adequate internal controls. Joining me now is Devlin Barrett, Justice Department reporter and co-author of the Trump Trials newsletter. It is indispensable over at the Washington Post. Also with me is former federal prosecutor Christy Greenberg. Christy, the New York Times reports on this Barbara Jones finding about, questionable business practices, accounting practices, adequate internal controls. Don't listen to me. And they say this is precisely the kind of data point that Judge Engoron may sort of fixate on, if you will, to really call for Trump to be fined a sizable amount of money. Do you think that is accurate analysis?
So I think it will go not necessarily towards the fine amount. I think it will go towards the question of whether this lifetime ban, this corporate death penalty gets imposed. Because one of the things the court is looking at is what is the likelihood of a future violation of this company, and to whether or not there should be a lifetime ban of Trump from ever engaging in real estate again. And so here, Judge Jones, now the independent monitor, is saying, actually, you don't have a compliance department. You never did an internal investigation when there was fraud. You had a CFO who pled to fraud, a controller who said he aided and abetted a fraud. You didn't fire them. Instead, you gave them handsome severance packages to not cooperate with law enforcement. And then I'm looking and I'm finding all of these errors, all of these disclosures that are incomplete or inconsistent. And you don't have a framework where I can feel confident as the monitor that you're not going to continue to do this if I don't have my oversight. And that seems like a very logical conclusion, given the fact that they haven't fixed anything about how their organization is set up and what these internal controls are.
Right. If you have deemed that the Trump organization has committed fraud, and then in the current day is still sort of practicing fast and loose accounting schemes, then potentially you say it's time for you to hang up your shingle and go home. But Devlin, the AP has a report, a really interesting report on how unusual it would be for a judge to order something like that in this case, given the fact that there's not a showing of obvious victims and major losses. I'll read the excerpt. An AP analysis of nearly 70 years of civil cases under the law showed that such a penalty has only been imposed a dozen previous times. And Trump's case stands apart in a significant way. It's the only big business found that was threatened with a shutdown without a showing of, again, obvious victims and major losses. This is sort of the argument that Trump's lawyers have been making to the court, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And it speaks to, I think, a basic disconnect between what the court system, including the independent monitor Barbara Jones, is drawing attention to, and the way that the Trump organization has worked for decades. And that is, the Trump organization is in some ways a multi-million-dollar organization that operates like a mom-and-pop grocery store. And a lot of what the independent monitor, Barbara Jones, a former federal judge, I might add, is flagging is the fact that, like, this is not a large company that behaves like a large company. This is a large company that behaves like a family small business. And she is finding what she thinks are problems in their accounting. And what the Trump organization is saying in reply is, this is nonsense. You're quibbling. You're focusing on like petty things, and it's unfair. And that is the basic conflict in this issue.
Yeah, I mean, they've also said, like, oh, Barbara Jones is trying to basically make a case for us to continue using her services by saying that, you know, we're not doing a good job.
Which makes no sense. Just taking a step back, Trump recommended Barbara Jones to be the independent
She was
monitor.
agreed upon by
Yes,
both parties.
She was agreed upon by both parties. She was a former federal judge. She's not seeking to enrich herself here. I think in the papers, one of Trump's lawyers said she was like Javert from Les Mis, and that, you know, this obsessive police officer who's seeking to go after Valjean. And it's like, Donald Trump's not Valjean. Valjean stole a loaf of bread. He is engaged in persistent fraud that's found by the judge. And so this idea of trying to malign Judge Jones, I mean, that is not going to work. She's independent. She's not on either side. She's calling it like she sees it.
You know, Devlin, I do think when we talk about, I mean, the penalty here, I mean, there's the $370 million, but then the ending of the Trump business in New York would be a devastating blow to Donald Trump's ego and potentially his pocketbook. This is not the only hit he's taking. There is more reporting that from the Times that he has spent $50 million in donor money on legal bills. And I just wonder, I know you're reporting on a lot of these trials, like, given, first of all, how prolonged this calendar is getting, how sustainable you think this is from a sort of inflow-outflow perspective?
Well, so I think it's a really important point, because I think what you're seeing is we are right now in the moment where the legal costs of being Donald Trump are eclipsing his political operation. Up till now, what we've seen is his political operation funding his legal bills, including some of the penalties that are associated with the E. Jean Carroll case. But when you see the $83 million verdict, when you see the expected Engoron decision, which is likely to be a lot of money as well, what you're seeing is there is no way his political operation can absorb the costs of those things. So right now, what we're seeing is very important, because it's the moment when the costs of his political career is impacting his business life, and he cares a great deal about the money. And so what we're seeing, I hope people understand, is that this is now starting to bite in a way that his political career has never bit in his business life before.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, the thing that I think he feels the most is the pain in his wallet, right? More than, I don't know, the moral indignities that he visits upon the American public. Christy, when we talk about, you know, the road ahead and where the lawyers are going to be needed the most, the federal election interference case against Donald Trump has been stayed since December 13th, which is a long time. I think the hearing was on January 9th, but still, some people thought this was kind of a pro forma exercise. Like, this is a ridiculous claim. It'll be over soon. We still haven't gotten the decision. Can you talk a little bit about whether there might be a strategy in all of this? And, you know, it seems almost certain that this isn't going to happen in March. And with every day that goes by, it seems like it's not going to happen in April either.
I think we're looking at late spring, maybe even early summer.
What's spring to you? Is that like when the clocks go forward, or when we're wearing shorts in New York?
I think it's when, at that point, hopefully this will have been before the Supreme Court, and we'll get the Supreme Court decision so that later in the spring we are having this trial. That is my hope. I think, look, I didn't think it would be so quick. I thought really we would be getting a decision from the D.C. Court of Appeals sometime this month. Tomorrow is the end of the month. So we are getting close to this point where you are hoping that they're going to come out with a decision soon. Look, it's a decision they know is going to be scrutinized. It's a decision in a matter of first impression, and they want to get it right. And you probably are looking at three judges who are trying to figure out how to be unanimous. So hopefully, the big thing, I think, is not necessarily what the ruling will be. I do think that part is easy. Maybe the reasoning is different about how they get there. But ultimately, the decision will be at the end, are they going to make sure that the normal rules about 45 days to go en banc before the entire Court of Appeals and 90 days to go before the Supreme Court, are they going to stay those in their decision? Are they going to short circuit this so that they'll say, our decision is on hold, you have X amount of time, a week, 2 weeks, to be able to petition to the Supreme Court or petition for a full Court of Appeals? If they do that, and I expect and hope that they will do that, then we should be back on track for this thing to be in a trial mode by the late spring.
Very lawyerly that you're not answering my question about spring. Is that spring forward or shorts in New York? I'll give it to you tonight, Christy. But as time goes on, my patience will be tested. Devin Barrett from the Washington Post, Christy Greenberg, thank you for your time tonight, guys.
Sex. Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So who's the insect? You? What? Who's the insect?
Protect you. They will defeat it on our world, and we will defeat them here.
This was just a diversion. Security, please bring up. Rabbit, she's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name? What was it?
Evac, sir.
Evac.
She's right in front.
We are facing a heavy sustained attack. They appear to be after the Allspark. General! You need to immediately hold on. National security stand down. Check it out. The failed the mission celebrations. The amateurs for a suicide mission.